In this video, we're going to learn about using curves to adjust color. You're looking at this landscape scene, and I've added a few layers here, which I'll take you through. There's a layer that's going to make the grass greener, there's a layer that's going to make the flowers more magenta in the background, and a layer that makes the sky deeper bluer. I'm going to turn off all of those layers, and we'll see also in the layers palette that there's a dodge and burn layer, making a couple little things lighter and darker. And I've got a curves layer to make the rocks a little dimmer on the right hand side. You see there, brought those down just a little bit. And now I'm going to pull back and we'll learn how to alter color with curves. The first thing I'm going to do is make this grass in the foreground a little bit greener. And I'm going to start by selecting that grass. And to do that selection, I'm going to use the quick mask mode, which is over here at the bottom of the toolbar. First time I use this, each time I always double click it to make sure that I have selected areas chosen instead of masked areas. And if you ever want to change the color of the overlay or how opaque it is, you can do those things here. If you have double clicked that and open it, always look back to that quick mask mode and make sure it's still darkened in, meaning that it's turned on. If it's not, just click it once to activate it. So we've entered the quick mask mode. I'm now going to get my brush tool. I'm going to work with full opacity and full flow, but you can work at lower opacity and lower flow if you want to control kind of how intense the selection is. I'm going to work with medium hardness on my brush, and I'm going to make kind of a bigger brush here with my right bracket key. And as I paint, we're going to see a red overlay. Now, technically I'm painting with black as my foreground color, but what it shows me is a red overlay, and this overlay will eventually become a selection, and that selection is the area that I will end up affecting. I'm going to change my brush on the fly with my right and left bracket keys as I need to, and I'm just kind of roughing this out. You can always go back and refine it after you've made your selection, even after you've made your adjustment. So I'm not worried about getting this completely perfect right now. I'm just kind of rough it out so we can see the basic concept. And really the adjustment I'm doing is going to be pretty subtle, so I don't think you're going to really see any imperfections in my selection. And that gets the basic thing done. This area maybe a little bit. Okay. So now that I've got that area painted with the quick mask mode, I'm going to exit the quick mask mode by clicking it a second time. Now we see a selection, the marching ants, all around the areas of the grass that I want to affect. And I'm going to now add a curves layer. So I go to my adjustment layer button in the layers palette, and I'm going to choose curves. Because I want to affect the color in this case, I'm going to switch my blending mode for this layer from normal to color. And instead of working with the overall RGB line, all three channels at once, I'm going to go specifically to the green channel and increase the brightness of just green. And I'm going to overdo it here for a second. You can see it gets very, very green. I want just a very subtle boost of green. And though this may seem a little odd, I'm actually going to also go to the blue channel and go slightly up on blue, which actually will give me less yellow. That's often what I feel is the case with greenery in a landscape, is it looks a little bit more yellow than we really think of it. Now, I said you could modify this mask after the fact. You'll see that I'm still selected on the mask for this layer while that mask is active, and I can click on it if I want to make it active. I could enlarge this selection, like maybe I want this area on the left side to also get a little benefit of that. So with white as my foreground color and painting on the mask with the brush, I'm just simply going to reveal the curves layer in that area as well. And we see just a slight changing of that to that brighter green. Before I move on, I'm going to double click that layer and rename it Grass Greener, so I know what I've done and where. Now let's look at these flowers in the background. And those flowers have a little bit of a magenta color. I want to bring that out more, particularly because magenta is a complement of green, so that should produce a lot of nice vibrance in my image. So I'm going to select those areas as well using quick mask mode, brush tool, black, and just going to kind of rough this out really fast. Again, I can always go back and fix it later, and there's some little rocks in the middle of the grass that I might keep from getting the magenta tint. I'll mention as I do this that this is a scene in Ireland and out on the Dingle Peninsula, really beautiful rocky coastline. And his flowers are great to look at, but murder to walk through. They're very thorny. Tiny little flowers, but really nice to look at from a distance. And I want to kind of get back what I saw in those flowers, what I felt like I was looking at that time. Okay, good enough for what we're going to do. And if I want to get rid of something from the selection, I could always switch over to white as my foreground color and maybe get in like on this rock right here. Maybe I want to remove that from what will be this selection. I can always remove it later too. So now that I have that basically painted out, I'm going to exit the quick mask mode by clicking on the quick mask mode icon a second time. Now I have this as a dotted line selection, the marching ants. And I'm going to go to my adjustment layer button at the bottom of my layers palette and choose curves. I'll switch the blending mode for this layer from normal to color. And I'm now going to go to the magenta channel, except there is no magenta channel. We only have red, green, and blue. So which channel would affect this? Magenta might seem like it's kind of red, and you might be tempted to go to red, but in fact, really, magenta is the opposite of green. So we're going to go to the green channel, and instead of moving green up, we're going to pull green down. And by doing so, we get a lot more magenta in that range. You could also go to red, you could go to blue, you could play around with these. If I go to red and pull that up, I'm getting more of a red-violet kind of color. If I pull this down, I'm going to get the opposite of red, which is cyan. If I go to the blue channel, if I bring this up, I'm going to go toward more of a purple, a bluish magenta. If I go down, I'm going to get more yellow, therefore kind of push it a little bit more toward orange. But I really like where it's at right now, and I'll click OK. Again, if there's any part of that mask I want to affect or refine, I can always paint on the image, which is painting on the mask, with black or white to hide or reveal more of that area or more of that layer. Now I want to go on and do something with the sky. So rather than paint the sky this time, I'm going to click on my quick selection tool and see if I can select the sky. It seems like it's got a pretty solid contour, contrasty contour boundary. Being a little slow here a second. And I'm brushing across through that sky, and it selects the sky and it goes right down to the edge of the rocks, and that's going to be pretty good. I'm now going to pop out another curves adjustment layer, and because we're dealing with a blue sky, I'm going to go to blue. And in this case, I might pull down the black point of blue. Oh, but what I didn't do is change the blending mode. So we're going to change the blending mode first to color, but we'll see about maybe altering that a little bit. So I'm going to boost up now the midpoint of blue, getting a little bit more brighter blue. Actually, put that black point back for a second. Boost up, so I'm going to get more saturation of blue there. So that's giving me a bluer sky, but what if I wanted to deepen it as well? Well, if I go back to the RGB channel, the composite RGB channel, and pull this down, where I normally would expect things to get much darker, I don't see much difference because I'm in the color mode. This is one case where I might switch back to the normal blending mode, and now I could pull the blue channel down in one way or the other, and I'm going to get a deeper, richer blue. Whether you decide to do that in 2 different adjustment layers or do it all in one is really up to you. Sometimes I might have one for adjusting the hue of the blue and one for adjusting the contrast or tonal range. I'm going to go back to those 2 layers that I just created and name them as well. So how about flowers, magenta, and this one, sky, deeper blue. And that is using curves for adjusting color.